Gospel of John, chapter 3, verses 1 through 17. Let us listen for the Word of God in Holy Scripture. Now there was a Pharisee named Nicodemus, the leader of the Jews. He came to Jesus by night and said to him, Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher who has come from God, for no one can do these signs that you do apart from the presence of God. Jesus answered him, Very truly I tell you, no one can see the kingdom of God without being born from above. Nicodemus said to him, How can anyone be born after having grown old? Can one enter a second time into the mother's womb and be born? Jesus answered, Very truly I tell you, no one can enter the kingdom of God without being born of water and spirit. What is born of the flesh is flesh. What is born of the Spirit is spirit. Do not be astonished that I said to you, you must be born from above. The wind blows where it chooses, and you hear the sound of it, but you do not know where it comes from or where it goes. So it is with everyone who was born of the Spirit. Nicodemus said to him, How can these things be? Jesus answered him, Are you a teacher of Israel, and yet you do not understand these things? Very truly, I tell you, we speak of what we know and testify to what we have seen. Yet you do not receive our testimony. If I have told you about earthly things, and you do not believe, how can you believe if I tell you about heavenly things? No one has ascended into heaven except the one who descended from heaven, the Son of Man. And just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes in him may have eternal life. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, so that everyone who believes in him may not perish, but may have eternal life. Indeed, God did not send the Son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him. Here is the reading of Holy Scripture. Let us pray together. Eternal God, in the reading of the Scriptures, may your word be heard. In the meditations of our hearts, may your word be known. And in the faithfulness of our lives, may your word be shown. Amen. For the next 4 Sundays of Lent, we will be in the Gospel of John, and we will be exploring 4 different individuals in the Gospel of John who each have an encounter with Jesus. Each of these individuals is unique to John's Gospel. They are not written about in any of the synoptics of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, except for Lazarus. But Lazarus is mentioned in Luke as a character in a parable that Jesus tells. He's not an actual person as he is in John's. All these individuals are unique to John's Gospel. And of course, Lazarus has the ultimate encounter with Jesus when he is raised from the dead. John's Gospel is different than the other 3 synoptics' Gospel. This was noticed early on in church history by the early church fathers who referred to John's Gospel as a spiritual gospel. In the synoptic Gospels, Jesus is a storyteller and is very direct. He speaks to others using short little wisdom sayings that we call aphorisms. In John's Gospel, Jesus speaks more like a philosopher with long, drawn-out discourses. Jesus communicates his message through signs that he performs throughout the Gospel. He speaks to people in a cryptic, symbolic, and metaphorical kind of way. In order to understand Jesus in John's Gospel, you have to be able to know how to interpret the symbolism that appears in each of John's stories. In our Gospel reading for today, it is Nicodemus who has an encounter with Jesus. Nicodemus was a well-known, prominent Jewish leader of the Pharisees. The Pharisees were one of the Jewish religious groups that existed during the time of Jesus. He comes to Jesus at night to have a conversation with him. Why does Nicodemus decide to come to Jesus at nighttime? Perhaps it's because he knows that his fellow Jewish leaders would not look at him too fondly if they saw him speaking to Jesus in public. And he knew that Jesus did not have a very good reputation, and he could possibly be persecuted just like Jesus for associating with him. So Nicodemus first comes to Jesus with a lot of certainty about who Jesus is, but will leave this encounter with Jesus completely baffled by what Jesus tells him. He says, "Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher who has come from God, for no one can do these signs that you do apart from the presence of God." Jesus responds to Nicodemus by telling him that no one can see the kingdom of God without being born from above. Being born from above in Greek can also be translated as being born again or being born anew. Nicodemus does not understand what Jesus is talking about. Maybe we can identify with that. This is not the easiest passage to try to work your way through, nor any of John for that matter. He is completely dumbfounded. He says to Jesus, "How can someone be born again? Can they, after they've grown old, but can they actually go back into their mother's womb for a second time and be born?" Nicodemus is taking what Jesus is telling him literally. He is not able to interpret the spiritual, symbolic language that Jesus is trying to communicate to him. He is in the dark. Light and darkness, those are two important symbols in the Gospel of John. Jesus is a light that shines through the darkness. But at this present time, Nicodemus is still in the dark, trying to make his way to the light. Nicodemus is a person who at first seems really sure of himself. He is certain about God, who God is, about how God operates. A lot of that probably came from his role as a Jewish leader of the Pharisees. But at this moment, he finds himself completely lost because he is bound up in his own literalism. He is unable to understand spiritual, symbolic language or metaphors. You know anybody like that? I have found from my own personal experience that certainty and literalism, or literalists, tend to be bound up together. Jesus then again responds to Nicodemus by saying, "Very truly I tell you, no one can enter the kingdom of God without being born of water and spirit. What is born of the flesh is flesh, and what is born of the Spirit is spirit. Do not be astonished that I say to you, you must be born from above." The late New Testament scholar Marcus Borg, in his book, The Heart of Christianity, says that there is a double meaning to how the word water is used in this passage. On the one hand, water is referring to baptism. On the other hand, parallel to flesh, it can also be referred to as the waters of birth. Though one is born of water, of the flesh, one must be born of the Spirit, that is anew from above. Borg also points out another double meaning with the way the word wind is used in the passage by Jesus. Wind in Greek can mean breath and spirit. What Jesus is trying to communicate to Nicodemus is that one must go through a process of dying to an older way of being in the world and becoming alive, born again to a new way of being into the world, to having a new identity, being a new person as a child of God, dying and rising into this new reality. It's only then that you will experience the kingdom of God, is what Jesus is saying. Abraham, in our Old Testament reading for this morning, is going through the same type of transformative process that Jesus is trying to lead Nicodemus through, dying and rising to a new life. Abraham is being told by God to leave behind everything that he knows and to trust God to take him to where God wants him to be. The journeys of both Abraham and Nicodemus remind me of the ancient Christian labyrinth, which is a huge circle with smaller circles inside the larger circle. There's one at St. Thomas Episcopal Church. You can actually walk these if you want to. They're also, I think, very symbolic of our own journeys with God, where we are always being called to change and transformation. Nicodemus will later on in John's Gospel become a transformed person. He will speak up for Jesus at his trial so that he can receive a fair trial. And he does this despite all of the other Jewish leaders who might think badly of him. And Nicodemus will bring 100 pounds of aloe and myrrh for Jesus at his burial. He is no longer at that point in the dark. He comes out into the light. So what we can learn from Nicodemus' encounter this morning with Jesus is that God never gives up on us. God is always there waiting for us to take that next step into what God has planned for us. Even when we seem like we know it all, but we really don't, God's love is always waiting for us to respond to God's invitation